I pretended to be unconscious in the hospital just to hear what my family really thought about me. It started 3 days after my motorcycle accident. The doctor said I was lucky to be alive, cracked ribs, concussion, broken leg, but I was healing faster than expected. By day 3, I was fully awake, but something made me keep my eyes closed when I heard footsteps approaching. My older brother Camden entered first. "Still out cold," he said to someone behind him. "Good," came my mother's voice. Maybe this will finally teach her a lesson. My heart stopped. What lesson? I mean, riding that death trap at 25? Mom continued. "She's always been reckless. Remember when she dropped out of law school? To become a paramedic," Camden corrected. Which, let's be honest, was probably smart. She never had the brains for law anyway. I lay there, perfectly still, as my family dissected my life choices like I was already dead. "The worst part is the money," Mom sighed. "Do you know how much this hospital stay is costing? And she has that bare bones insurance from her ambulance job. We could always just—" Camden's voice dropped lower. "Don't even say it," Mom hissed. "I'm just saying, if she doesn't wake up, the life insurance would—" "Stop." Mom's voice was sharp. "Someone might hear you." My blood turned to ice. They were discussing my life insurance, while I was lying right there. "Look, all I'm saying is, maybe this is a sign," Camden continued. "She's never fit in with this family anyway. Always playing hero, always making us look bad with her blue-collar job. Remember when she brought that homeless man to Christmas dinner?" Mom asked, her voice dripping with disgust. "Or when she testified against Uncle Richard at his trial," Camden added. Uncle Richard, the family secret we weren't supposed to talk about. The reason I'd cut contact with most of my relatives 2 years ago. "She destroyed this family," Mom said quietly. "Richard's in prison because of her lies." Lies. They were calling my testimony about what he did to me lies. The room fell silent. I heard the rustle of clothing like someone was leaning closer to my bed. "You know what I think?" Camden whispered. "I think we need to have a serious conversation with her doctor about her prognosis." "What kind of conversation?" Mom's voice was barely audible. "The kind where we discuss quality of life. Brain injuries can be unpredictable. Sometimes it's more merciful to let someone go." "Camden? Think about it, Mom. She's never going to change. She'll wake up and go right back to embarrassing us. Back to her pathetic job, her bleeding heart causes, her vindictive crusade against our family. She cost us everything," Mom said, her voice growing stronger. "The country club membership, the charity board positions. Do you know how humiliating it was when the Weatherbys asked me to step down? Because of her lies about Richard," Camden agreed. "One troubled girl's fantasy destroyed a good man's reputation." Fantasy. 15 years of abuse was a fantasy to them. "If she doesn't wake up," Camden continued slowly, "the insurance money would solve a lot of problems. We could pay off the house, maybe take that European trip you've been wanting." "How much is the policy worth?" Mom asked. $200,000. Plus there might be a settlement from the motorcycle company. Faulty brakes, remember? My stomach churned. The brakes weren't faulty. I'd hit black ice. "We'd have to be careful," Mom said. "Make sure everything looks natural." "Of course." Grief-stricken family making the difficult decision to let their daughter go peacefully. "When should we talk to the doctor?" "Soon, before she shows more signs of improvement." I heard footsteps moving closer to my bed again. "Look at her," Camden said, his voice cold. 25 years old, and this is what she has to show for it. No husband, no real career, no money. She's a disappointment. I had such hopes for her," Mom sighed. "Law school, a proper marriage, grandchildren. Instead, she chose to throw it all away. For what? To save strangers who probably don't even appreciate it? She always was selfish." Mom agreed. "Even as a child, always causing drama, always seeking attention. Attention. That's what they called my cries for help when Uncle Richard was hurting me." "The funeral would actually help our image," Camden mused. "Tragic young woman, taken too soon. People love a martyred hero story. We could set up a scholarship," Mom added, warming to the idea. "Show how much we supported her career choice. Perfect. Turn her into a symbol while finally being free of the real thing." Their footsteps moved toward the door. "I should go talk to that doctor," Mom said. "What's his name? Martinez? Good idea. And I'll call the insurance company, just to understand the process. Remember, if anyone asks, we were here praying for her recovery," Camden finished. "I know." The door clicked shut. I lay in the darkness, processing what I'd just heard. My family wasn't just disappointed in me, they were actively hoping I'd die, and they were planning to profit from it. I forced myself to breathe normally, to keep my heart rate steady. The monitors beside me beeped rhythmically, marking time while I tried to understand what kind of people I was related to. That night I replayed every conversation from my childhood, every family gathering, every moment I thought showed love. How many of those smiles had been fake? How many expressions of pride had been performances for outsiders? I remember the night I'd finally told my parents about Uncle Richard. I was 22, home from college for Christmas break. I'd spent 4 years in therapy, building the courage to speak. When I finally said the words, told them what he'd done to me from age 7 to 18, their first response wasn't concern for me. It was concern for the family reputation. "Are you sure you remember this correctly?" Mom had asked. "You were so young. Children sometimes misinterpret adult affection," Dad had added. They'd spent that entire conversation trying to convince me I was wrong, that Uncle Richard was a good man who'd been nothing but kind to me. When I insisted, when I showed them the journal I'd kept documenting every incident, they'd accused me of having an overactive imagination. "You always were dramatic," Mom had said, making up stories to get attention, but I hadn't made it up. And 2 years later, when Uncle Richard was caught abusing my cousin Layla, they couldn't deny it anymore. The physical evidence was undeniable. The medical reports were conclusive. Yet somehow, even then, I remained the villain in their story. The next morning brought more visitors. My cousin Bridget arrived with her husband Trevor, both dressed in expensive clothes that screamed success and superiority. "Any change?" Bridget asked, settling into the chair beside my bed like she was attending a social event. "None," Mom replied, her voice heavy with manufactured grief. "The doctors say it could go either way." "Such a tragedy," Trevor said, though his tone suggested he was discussing the weather. "She was so young." "Has anyone been to her apartment?" Bridget asked, and I could hear the calculation in her voice. "I mean, someone should check on her things. Make sure nothing gets stolen." My apartment. The one-bedroom place I'd worked 3 jobs to afford, decorated with secondhand furniture and artwork from local artists I'd befriended. It wasn't much, but it was mine. "Camden has her keys," Mom said. "He's handling all that." "Good thinking," Trevor said. "Does she have any valuables? Electronics? Jewelry? Savings accounts?" The audacity was breathtaking. They were cataloging my possessions while I lay supposedly unconscious 3 feet away. "Not much." Camden's voice joined the conversation as he entered the room. "Her bike was the most expensive thing she owned, and that's totaled." "What about her savings?" Bridget pressed. "Investment accounts? Retirement funds?" "She spent everything on that ridiculous motorcycle," Mom said with disgust, "and giving money away to every sob story that crossed her path." They were talking about my donations to the women's shelter, the homeless veteran I'd helped get back on his feet, the immigrant family whose medical bills I'd paid when their son was hit by a drunk driver. "Remember when she paid for that stranger's cancer treatment?" Bridget laughed, a sound devoid of warmth. "Thousands of dollars to someone she'd met exactly once." "Or when she gave her entire Christmas bonus to that animal rescue," Camden added, shaking his head like my generosity was a mental illness. "At least she had good life insurance," Trevor said, steering the conversation back to finances. "That shows some planning ahead." "The EMT union required it," Camden explained, though I doubt she understood what it meant for her beneficiaries. "Who are the beneficiaries?" Bridget asked, trying to sound casual but failing miserably. "Mom and I are listed as co-beneficiaries," Camden said. "She set it up when she started the job, back when she still considered us family, before I'd testified against Uncle Richard. Before I'd learned that truth was less important to them than reputation." "That's fortunate," Trevor said, the word hitting me like a physical blow. "At least something good can come from this tragedy." Fortunate. My potential death was fortunate to them. They stayed for another hour, their conversation drifting between fake concern for my condition and very real interest in my financial situation. They discussed funeral arrangements, memorial services, and how to present my life story in the most flattering light possible. For them, not once did anyone mention missing me. No one shared a fond memory. No one expressed hope for my recovery. They talked about me like I was already dead, like I was a problem finally being solved. When they finally left, I heard Mom whisper to Camden in the hallway, "Have you talked to Dr. Martinez yet?" "This afternoon," he replied. "I'm going to ask about her realistic prognosis and our options." Our options, not my options. Theirs. That afternoon, Dr. Martinez entered with Camden, and I immediately sensed the tension between them. I'd liked Dr. Martinez during my conscious interactions. He seemed genuine, competent, and caring. I hoped he wouldn't be swayed by whatever manipulation Camden was planning. "Doctor, I need to ask some difficult questions," Camden began, his voice heavy with fake emotion that made my skin crawl. "Of course. What can I help you with? My sister's always been troubled. Mental health issues, risky behavior, poor decision-making. Is it possible that even if she wakes up, she might not be the same person?" I felt sick. Camden was laying groundwork to question my mental competency, setting up a narrative that would justify whatever they were planning. "Brain injuries can certainly affect personality and cognitive function," Dr. Martinez said carefully. "But your sister's scans look very promising. I expect a full recovery. But you can't be certain?" "Medicine isn't about certainties, Mr. Thornfield. It's about probabilities. And the probability is that your sister will make a complete recovery." "What if we're not comfortable with those odds?" Camden asked, and the casual way he said it made my blood run cold. There was a long pause. I could almost hear Dr. Martinez processing the implications of the question. "I'm not sure I understand what you're asking," he said slowly. "I'm asking about our options. As her family, if we feel that the quality of life she might have isn't acceptable." Another pause. This one felt dangerous. "Mr. Thornfield, are you asking about withdrawing life support?" "I'm asking about all our options. Your sister isn't on life support. She's breathing on her own, her vitals are stable, and her brain function is normal. There's nothing to withdraw. But if her condition deteriorated, there's no indication that it will. In fact, I expect her to regain consciousness within the next day or 2. I could feel Camden's frustration radiating across the room like heat. "Doctor, you don't understand. My sister has a history of making poor choices, reckless behavior. She caused significant trauma to our family with false accusations against a relative. If she wakes up, she might continue down that destructive path." False accusations. 15 years of documented abuse were false accusations. "Mr. Thornfield, my job is to treat medical conditions, not to make judgments about patients' life choices. Your sister is recovering well from her injuries. That's all that matters to me. Even if she's a danger to herself and others? Has she been declared mentally incompetent by a court? No, but then she has the same rights as any adult patient. I'm going to check on her now. I'll ask you to step outside." Camden's footsteps retreated reluctantly, and I could hear his anger in the heavy way his shoes hit the floor. Dr. Martinez approached my bed, and I felt safer with him there. "Your vitals are excellent," he said, making notes on his chart. "Heart rate, blood pressure, brain activity. Everything looks normal for someone in your condition." He leaned closer and lowered his voice to barely above a whisper. I know you can hear me. Your brother's questions were inappropriate, and I want you to know that no one will make medical decisions for you without your consent. When you're ready to wake up, just open your eyes. My heart rate spiked on the monitor, betraying my consciousness. That's what I thought, he said quietly. Take your time. I'll be here when you're ready. He left, and I lay there processing what had just happened. Dr. Martinez knew I was conscious. He was protecting me. But for how long? And what would Camden do when he realized his plan wasn't working? That evening brought a parade of family members I hadn't seen since Uncle Richard's trial. They'd all cut contact with me after the conviction, choosing to side with an abuser rather than admit they'd failed to protect a child. My Aunt Dolores arrived first, her designer purse clutched like a weapon, her face arranged in an expression of theatrical grief. Such a tragedy. She sighed dramatically, taking the chair closest to my bed. She had so much potential. Wasted potential, Uncle Paul corrected as he joined her. But maybe this is God's way of giving her peace. Peace from what? Mom asked, though I suspected she already knew the answer. From her demons. From the lies she told. From the guilt of destroying our family. They thought I felt guilty. They thought I was tormented by telling the truth about Uncle Richard. Richard always said she'd been troubled since childhood, Dolores continued, her voice gaining strength as she warmed to her narrative. Making up stories, seeking attention. He tried to help her, spent so much time with her, trying to be a positive influence. Positive influence. That's what they called grooming. The trial nearly killed him, Paul added, his voice heavy with manufactured sorrow. An innocent man, destroyed by a disturbed girl's fantasies. He's doing better now, though, Dolores said, brightening slightly. Prison has given him time to reflect, to forgive her for what she did to him. Forgive me for what he did to me. He writes to us sometimes, Paul said. Never bitter, never angry, just sad that she couldn't accept his love and guidance. His love. 15 years of abuse was love to them. Maybe if she doesn't wake up, it's for the best, Paul mused, his voice taking on a philosophical tone. She can't cause any more damage. And Richard could finally have peace, Dolores agreed. Poor man has suffered enough. They stayed for 2 hours, taking turns sharing their revisionist history of my relationship with Uncle Richard. In their version, he was a misunderstood saint who'd tried to help a troubled child. I was a vindictive liar who destroyed an innocent man out of spite. The most disturbing part was how convinced they seemed of their own story. It wasn't deliberate deception. They'd genuinely rewritten history in their minds to avoid confronting their own failure to protect me. When they finally left, I heard Paul tell Camden in the hallway, if you need character witnesses about her mental state, we're happy to help. Character witnesses. They were building a case against my competency. The next day brought my father. I hadn't seen him since the trial, where he'd sat in the back row with his arms crossed, stone-faced throughout my testimony. When the guilty verdict was read, he'd walked out without acknowledging me. Now he sat beside my bed, and for a moment, just a moment, I hoped he might be different from the others. Maybe time had given him perspective. Maybe he'd realized what Uncle Richard had really done to me. I don't know if you can hear me, he said quietly, his voice rough with what sounded like genuine emotion. But I need to say something. My heart monitor betrayed my attention, beeping slightly faster. Your mother thinks I should let you go. Camden thinks it would be mercy. Maybe they're right. The hope died in my chest like a snuffed candle. You broke this family apart, he continued, his voice gaining strength. My brother is in prison because of you. My wife can't show her face at church. My son has to explain to his colleagues why his sister destroyed our reputation. But I know why you did it. You were always jealous of Richard. He was successful, respected, accomplished, everything you weren't, so you decided to bring him down. Jealous of my abuser. The man who'd stolen my childhood was someone I was supposedly envious of. The worst part is that people believed you. A court believed you. But I know my brother. He's a good man who made one mistake. A mistake. Not mistakes. Not a pattern of abuse spanning over a decade. One mistake. He trusted you, Dad continued. Tried to be a father figure when you needed guidance. And you repaid his kindness by destroying his life. Father figure. The irony was suffocating. If you wake up, nothing changes. You'll still be the same vindictive, attention-seeking girl who destroyed our family for your 5 minutes of fame in court. 5 minutes of fame. 4 days of testimony about 15 years of abuse was fame-seeking to him. Maybe it's better if you don't wake up, he said, standing to leave. Maybe everyone would be happier. He paused at the door, then returned to my bedside. I've already signed the papers Camden prepared. If your condition deteriorates, we won't keep you alive artificially. It's what's best for everyone. Papers. They'd prepared legal documents to ensure my death. I should hate you for what you did to Richard, he said, his voice dropping to a whisper. But you're still my daughter, so I'll just hope you find peace. After he left, I lay there trying to process the depth of their betrayal. My own father, the man who was supposed to protect me, had chosen my abuser over me. Not only did he refuse to believe what Uncle Richard had done, he was actively facilitating my death. The realization hit me like a physical blow. I was completely alone. Every person who was supposed to love me unconditionally had conditions, and I'd failed to meet them by refusing to be silent about my abuse. That night, a new voice entered my room. Female, professional, with the crisp confidence of someone accustomed to handling delicate situations. Mrs. Thornfield, I'm attorney Patricia Walsh. You called about your daughter's situation? An attorney. They'd hired legal counsel to help them kill me. Yes, Mom replied, settling into the visitor's chair. We need to understand our options regarding our daughter's care. I've reviewed the medical records you provided. Your daughter's condition is stable, correct? For now, but brain injuries are unpredictable. The doctors say there could be complications. That was a lie. Dr. Martinez had said I was recovering well. And you mentioned concerns about her mental competency? She's made increasingly erratic decisions over the past few years, Mom said, warming to her narrative. Dropped out of law school to take a low-paying job, alienated the entire family with false accusations against her uncle. False accusations? She claimed he abused her as a child. The court believed her lies, and now an innocent man is in prison. I see. And you're concerned that if she recovers, she might continue making poor decisions? We're concerned she might be a danger to herself and others. She's always been impulsive, reckless. This motorcycle accident is just the latest example. Well, if she regains consciousness, you could petition for guardianship based on mental incompetency. With the right documentation, you could make her medical and financial decisions. What kind of documentation would we need? Psychiatric evaluations, testimony from family members about her erratic behavior, evidence of poor judgment. The more comprehensive the case, the better your chances. And if she doesn't regain consciousness, then the medical power of attorney you've established would allow you to make end-of-life decisions on her behalf. Medical power of attorney. They'd given themselves the legal right to kill me while I was unconscious and couldn't contest it. How quickly could we move forward? Camden's voice joined the conversation as he entered the room. If she wakes up, we could file a petition within days. The court would order an evaluation, and if she's found incompetent, you'd be appointed as her guardians. And if she doesn't wake up, that's a decision for you and her doctors. Some families choose to maintain life support indefinitely. Others feel it's more humane to allow natural death. They spent another hour discussing legal strategies, financial implications, and how to present their case for my incompetency. Attorney Walsh explained how to document my erratic behavior, which family members would make the best witnesses, and what kind of psychiatric evaluation would support their claims. When they finished, I understood the full scope of their plan. If I woke up, they'd have me declared incompetent and control every aspect of my life. If I didn't wake up, they'd let me die and collect the insurance money. Either way, they eliminated the problem I represented, but they'd made one crucial mistake. They assumed I was helpless, that I had no agency in my own fate. They were about to learn otherwise. The next morning, Dr. Martinez returned alone for his rounds. As soon as he entered the room, I could sense his tension. I know you're awake, he said quietly, checking to make sure the door was closed. And I know what your family is planning. We need to talk. I opened my eyes slowly, blinking in the fluorescent light that suddenly seemed too bright. How long have you known? I whispered, my voice hoarse from days of silence. Since yesterday. Your heart rate spikes every time they say something disturbing. Your brain scans show normal activity patterns. You're physically capable of consciousness. I struggled to sit up, my body stiff and weak from days of lying motionless. They're trying to kill me, I said, the words feeling surreal even as I spoke them. I know. And legally, they might be able to do it. They've filed paperwork establishing medical power of attorney. How is that possible? I never gave them that authority. They claimed you were incapacitated and had no advance directives. Without anyone to contest it, the court granted their emergency petition. But I'm conscious now. Yes, but they could argue that your brain injury has affected your judgment. With the right psychiatric evaluation and family testimony, they could have you declared incompetent. So what are my options? Dr. Martinez pulled a chair close to my bed, his expression grave, limited, but not non-existent. Tell me about this uncle they mentioned, the one in prison. So I told him everything. About Uncle Richard moving in with us when I was 7, after his messy divorce left him temporarily homeless. About how my parents welcomed him with open arms, grateful for the help with childcare while they worked long hours building their careers. About how his help quickly turned into something much darker. It started as games, I said, the words feeling like broken glass in my throat. Special games that were our secret. He said I was mature for my age, that I could handle grown-up activities other kids couldn't. Dr. Martinez listened without judgment, occasionally taking notes. By the time I was 10, the games had escalated. He convinced me it was normal, that all uncles did this with their nieces. When I got uncomfortable, he'd remind me how much my parents depended on him, how devastated they'd be if I caused problems. Did you ever try to tell anyone? Once, when I was 12, I tried to tell my mom. She was getting ready for work, rushing around the kitchen, and I said that Uncle Richard made me uncomfortable. What did she say? She said I was being dramatic, that Uncle Richard was family, that he loved me and would never hurt me. She said I should be grateful to have such a caring uncle. Dr. Martinez shook his head in disgust. The abuse continued until I left for college at 18. Even then, he'd find ways to corner me during holiday visits. It wasn't until I was 22 and in therapy that I understood what had really happened to me. What made you finally report it? My cousin Layla. She was 7, the same age I was when it started. I noticed him paying her the same kind of special attention. I couldn't let it happen to another child. So you went to the police? First, I tried to warn my family. I thought if I explained what he'd done to me, they'd protect Layla. But they accused me of being jealous, vindictive, attention-seeking. They said I was making up stories to hurt Uncle Richard because I'd always resented his success. That must have been devastating. It was, but I couldn't let Layla suffer what I'd suffered. So I went to the police alone, and they believed you? Eventually. The detective was experienced with sexual abuse cases. She knew what to look for, what questions to ask. When they examined Layla, they found evidence that confirmed my worst fears. He was already abusing her. Yes, for months. And there were others. Girls from his neighborhood, his ex-wife's daughter from her first marriage. The investigation uncovered a pattern going back 20 years. Dr. Martinez was quiet for a long moment, processing the information. Your family still doesn't believe you? They believe what's convenient. Admitting he's guilty would mean admitting they failed to protect me. It's easier to believe I'm lying. What do you want to do now? I want to disappear. I want them to think I died. That's complicated. And illegal. More illegal than conspiracy to commit murder? Point taken. But faking a death involves falsifying medical records, insurance fraud, potential federal charges. What if we don't fake it? What if we just let them make their choice? Dr. Martinez raised an eyebrow. I don't follow. They want to withdraw life support, right? What if we give them the opportunity? What if I have a medical emergency that requires life support, and then they make the decision to let me die? You're not on life support, but I could be, temporarily. A complication that requires intubation. Then, when they choose to let me die, we document everything. That's incredibly risky. Less risky than letting them actually kill me. Dr. Martinez studied my chart, thinking hard. There might be another way, he said slowly, but it would require perfect timing, absolute trust, and significant risk for both of us. What kind of way? Medical records can be interpreted creatively. If you were to have a sudden decline, require emergency intervention, and then pass away despite our best efforts, well, death certificates are filed based on medical judgment. You'd fake my death? I'd document a tragic outcome following complications from traumatic brain injury, which technically wouldn't be entirely false. You did have a brain injury. And then you'd need a new identity, a new life, and the ability to stay hidden indefinitely. The plan seemed impossible, too complex, too dangerous. But the alternative was letting my family either kill me or control me for the rest of my life. Let's do it, I said. Are you sure? Once you're legally dead, there's no going back. You'd lose everything. Your career, your friends, your entire identity. I've already lost my family. Everything else can be replaced. What about your job? Your colleagues? They'll remember me as someone who died too young. That's better than living as someone who was never really alive. Dr. Martinez spent the next hour outlining the details. He'd document a sudden deterioration in my condition requiring emergency life support. My family would be called in to make the decision about continuing care. When they chose to let me die, he'd document my passing and arrange for my body to be transferred to a specific funeral home with connections to witness protection services. This will end my career if we're caught, he warned. The medical board would revoke my license. I could face criminal charges. Why are you willing to risk it? Because I've seen what families like yours do to survivors. Because I took an oath to do no harm, and letting them kill you would violate that oath. And because sometimes the system fails people who deserve better. What do you need from me? Complete trust. When the time comes, you'll need to stop breathing on your own. You'll need to let the machines show cardiac arrest while staying conscious enough to hear what they say. How long will I need to hold my breath? Not long, maybe 30 seconds. But it has to be convincing. What if something goes wrong? Then we improvise. But I'll be monitoring everything. I won't let anything happen to you. 2 days later, Dr. Martinez called my family with urgent news. I'd taken a sudden turn for the worse. Brain swelling had increased dramatically, requiring emergency intubation to protect my airway. They needed to come immediately. When they arrived, I was connected to a ventilator, heavily sedated according to my chart, but actually fully conscious. Dr. Martinez had coached me extensively on the procedure, how to stay perfectly still, how to let the machine breathe for me, how to remain unresponsive to stimulation. What happened? Mom asked, and I could hear the carefully controlled excitement in her voice. The brain swelling increased suddenly overnight, Dr. Martinez explained gravely. We had to intubate to protect her airway. She's in a medically induced coma now. What's the prognosis? Camden asked, trying to sound concerned but failing to hide his anticipation. Guarded. The increased pressure has affected vital brain structures. Even if we can reduce the swelling, there may be permanent damage. What kind of damage? Mom pressed. Cognitive impairment, personality changes, loss of motor function. She might never be the same person she was. I could practically hear their relief. What are our options? Camden asked. We can continue aggressive treatment and hope the swelling responds to medication, or... Dr. Martinez paused dramatically. Or what? Mom prompted eagerly. Given her prognosis and the likelihood of severe impairment, some families choose to withdraw life support and allow natural death to occur. Is that what you'd recommend? Camden asked. I can't make that decision for you. I can only provide information about her likely outcomes and respect whatever choice you make as her family. They asked to speak privately. Through my closed eyelids, I could sense them huddling together near the window, whispering urgent consultations about my fate. Doctor, Mom said finally, returning to my bedside, we've made our decision, and that is... we want to withdraw life support. It's what she would want. She always said she wouldn't want to live if she couldn't be independent. I'd never said any such thing, but I wasn't surprised they'd invent a conversation that justified their choice. She wouldn't want to be a burden, Camden added. This is the merciful thing to do. Merciful. Murdering me was merciful. Are you certain? Dr. Martinez asked. This decision is irreversible. We're certain, Camden said firmly. When can we proceed? I'll need to complete some paperwork, notify the ethics committee, and allow time for any family members who want to say goodbye. Tomorrow morning, we can begin the process. That night, Dr. Martinez came to check on me after the evening shift change. Are you ready for this? He whispered, checking to make sure no one was in the hallway. I squeezed his hand, the first voluntary movement I'd made in days. Tomorrow, when they withdraw the ventilator, you'll need to stop breathing on your own for about 30 seconds. I'll document cardiac arrest, then begin resuscitation efforts that will fail. From there, you'll be transferred to the morgue and then to our contact at the funeral home. What about my records here? They'll show that you died from complications following withdrawal of life support. Cause of death will be listed as natural. Brain death following traumatic injury. And if they want an autopsy, they won't. Your family has already indicated they want immediate cremation with minimal ceremony. Of course they did. The faster I disappeared, the sooner they could collect the insurance money and move on with their lives. One more thing, Dr. Martinez said. I've contacted someone who specializes in helping abuse survivors disappear. She'll be waiting at the funeral home to begin the process of creating your new identity. What's her name? Agent Patricia Wolf, FBI. She's been tracking your uncle's case and knows about your family's reaction to your testimony. The FBI was involved. This was bigger than just my family's greed. It was part of a larger investigation into how abuse survivors were silenced by their family. The next morning, my entire extended family gathered for my death. Aunts, uncles, cousins, people who hadn't spoken to me in years, suddenly appeared to witness my final moments. They arranged themselves around my bed like mourners at a wake, their faces carefully composed in expressions of grief that didn't reach their eyes. Dr. Martinez explained the procedure with professional gravity. When life support was withdrawn, my body would either resume natural breathing or cardiovascular function would cease. There was no way to predict which would happen. Before we begin, Mom announced, we'd like to say our goodbyes. One by one, they approached my bed with their hollow words of farewell. We love you. Rest in peace. You'll finally have the peace you've been seeking. Uncle Paul leaned close and whispered, so only I could hear, maybe now Richard can finally forgive you. Aunt Dolores squeezed my hand and said, we know you're sorry for what you did to our family. My father kissed my forehead and murmured, I hope you find whatever you were looking for. Camden was last. He gripped my hand and said loud enough for everyone to hear, we're sorry it had to end this way, but we know this is what you'd want. To be free from the pain you've been carrying. What I'd want. They were killing me for my own good. Are you ready to proceed? Dr. Martinez asked. We're ready, Mom said without hesitation. Dr. Martinez began the process of withdrawing life support. First, he discontinued the IV medications that were supposedly keeping me sedated. Then he removed the feeding tube. Finally, he began preparing to extubate me. Once I remove the breathing tube, we'll know quickly whether she can breathe on her own, he explained. And if she can't? Camden asked. Then we'll make her as comfortable as possible while nature takes its course. The breathing tube was removed. This was my moment. I forced myself to remain completely still, to not draw a single breath, despite every instinct screaming at me to inhale. She's not breathing on her own, Dr. Martinez announced, watching the monitors that were showing the predetermined patterns we'd arranged. Around me, I heard the subtle sounds of relief disguised as grief, quiet sighs, shuffling feet, whispered conversations about how peaceful I looked. Heart rate is dropping, Dr. Martinez playing his role perfectly. Is she in pain? Mom asked, though her voice held no real concern. No, she's completely unconscious. This is peaceful. How long will it take? Camden asked. Not long now. Her heart rate is becoming irregular. I lay there holding my breath while counting seconds in my head. 30 seconds felt like 30 years, but I forced myself to remain motionless. I'm losing cardiac rhythm, Dr. Martinez said. I'm going to call it. He went through the official procedure, noting the time of death, documenting the cause, and explaining next steps to my family. We'd like to arrange cremation as quickly as possible, Camden said immediately. She wouldn't want a big funeral. She was always private about these things. Private. They wanted me cremated quickly so there'd be no chance of discovery. I understand, Dr. Martinez said. I'll have her body transferred to Morrison Funeral Home. They can handle all the arrangements discreetly. Morrison Funeral Home, the facility Dr. Martinez had arranged to facilitate my disappearance. For the next hour, I lay perfectly still while my family discussed funeral logistics around my corpse. They planned a small memorial service, chose the cheapest cremation package, and drafted a brief obituary that focused more on their grief than my life. The life insurance company will need a death certificate, Camden mentioned to Dr. Martinez. I'll have that filed within 24 hours, he replied professionally. When they finally left to begin making arrangements, Dr. Martinez waited another hour before approaching my bed. They're gone, he whispered. You can breathe now. I gasped, filling my lungs with air that tasted like freedom and terror in equal measure. How do you feel? Like a ghost, I said, my voice hoarse from the effort of staying silent. How does this work now? In about an hour, the funeral home will send a hearse. You'll be transferred in a body bag to their facility, where you'll meet Agent Wolf and begin the process of becoming someone new. What about you? Won't they investigate when they realize the death certificate was falsified? The beauty of this plan is that technically, I never falsified anything. You did stop breathing, your heart did stop, and you were pronounced dead based on the observable evidence. If questions arise later, I'll say there was a communication error about the timing of your recovery. That seems like a thin defense. It's better than the alternative, and Agent Wolf assures me that your family's actions are already under federal investigation. Once that becomes public, any questions about your death will be overshadowed by the criminal charges they'll be facing. They're really going to be arrested? Insurance fraud, conspiracy to commit murder, abuse of medical power of attorney. The FBI has been building a case since they filed that insurance claim before you were even declared dead. An hour later, I was wheeled out of the hospital in a body bag, loaded into a hearse, and transported to Morrison Funeral Home. The irony wasn't lost on me. I was being born again in a place designed for endings. At the funeral home, I was transferred to a secure room where I met Agent Patricia Wolf. She was younger than I'd expected, with kind eyes and a firm handshake that immediately put me at ease. Dr. Martinez contacted us about your situation, she explained. We've been investigating your family's activities since they filed the insurance claim. They filed it before I was actually dead? Camden submitted the paperwork and supporting documentation the same day they made the decision to withdraw life support. That's insurance fraud, conspiracy, and attempted murder. What happens now? Now we build a case while keeping you safe. Your family believes you're dead, which gives us time to gather evidence and prepare for prosecution. Agent Wolf explained that I'd be placed in a form of federal witness protection while they completed their investigation. I'd receive a new identity, complete with social security number, birth certificate, and medical records that documented my recovery from a different accident in a different state. What about my life here, my job, my friends? They'll mourn your loss and remember you fondly. It's not ideal, but it's safer than the alternative. For the next 6 months, I lived in a safe house in Colorado, working with federal prosecutors to build the case against my family. I testified before grand juries, provided detailed accounts of their conversations and plans, and helped establish the timeline of their conspiracy. The FBI had also been recording their phone calls and monitoring their financial activities. Camden had been researching the insurance claim process weeks before my accident. Mom had been consulting with financial advisors about investing a large sum of money. They'd even met with travel agents about that European vacation they'd mentioned. They'd been planning to profit from my death before I was even injured. The case attracted national media attention when the arrests were made. Family plots daughter's death for insurance money. Abuse survivor outsmarts murderous relatives. The woman who had to die to live. Camden was sentenced to 18 years for conspiracy to commit murder and insurance fraud. Mom received 15 years. The other family members who participated received sentences ranging from 5 to 10 years, depending on their level of involvement. Uncle Richard's parole was denied again, with my case cited as evidence of his continued danger to family members and the ongoing impact of his crimes. Dr. Martinez faced a medical board investigation, but was ultimately cleared of all charges. The board ruled that his actions were justified given the credible threat to patient safety, and he was commended for his courage in protecting a vulnerable patient. 2 years after my death, I testified at Uncle Richard's third parole hearing via secure video link. The parole board was shown evidence of my family's conspiracy and my continued need for federal protection. His parole was denied for another 5 years. I now live under the legal identity of Sage Miller in Oregon, working as a paramedic in a rural county where my skills are desperately needed. I've completed additional training under my new identity and earned certifications that allow me to serve as a flight medic for the region's helicopter rescue service. My new colleagues know me as someone who transferred from Colorado after a difficult divorce. They don't know about my past, but they know me as someone who fights fiercely for patients, especially those who are vulnerable or voiceless. The work is demanding, but fulfilling. Every life I save feels like proof that I made the right choice, that surviving was worth the cost of everything I left behind. Sometimes I get letters forwarded through the FBI from distant relatives who claim they always suspected something was wrong and want to reconnect now that the truth has come out. Some offer apologies for their role in ostracizing me. Others claim they were manipulated by the family members who are now in prison. I read these letters carefully, then file them away unanswered. Because the most important lesson I learned during those days in that hospital bed is that family isn't defined by blood or genetics. It's defined by the people who show up when you need them, who believe you when you tell difficult truths, and who protect you even when it costs them something precious. Dr. Martinez still checks in through secure channels, updating me on his continued work with abuse survivors and the protocols he's developed for identifying families who pose threats to vulnerable patients. Agent Wolf has become a genuine friend, someone who understands the complexity of survivor guilt and the ongoing challenge of building a new identity while processing old trauma. My new EMT partner, Quinn, doesn't know about my past, but has become the kind of friend I never had growing up. Someone who values honesty, courage, and genuine kindness over social status or family reputation. Last year, I helped save a teenage girl who'd been sexually abused by her stepfather. When her family tried to pressure her to recant her statement, tried to convince her to keep it in the family to avoid scandal, I made sure she had advocates who believed her. I made sure she had what I'd never had, adults who prioritized her safety over their own comfort. The hardest part of my new life isn't the isolation or the false identity, or even the knowledge that I can never return to who I used to be. It's accepting that the people who were supposed to love me unconditionally were willing to kill me for money and convenience. But from that devastating truth came an unexpected gift, the absolute certainty that I'm stronger than I ever imagined. Strong enough to fake my own death, outsmart people who thought I was helpless, and rebuild my entire existence from nothing. Strong enough to save others. Every emergency call I respond to, every patient I help stabilize, every family I comfort in their worst moments is proof that sometimes the best revenge against people who try to destroy you is simply refusing to stay destroyed. My family thought they were eliminating a problem. Instead, they created someone truly unstoppable. Someone who learned that the most powerful thing you can do when people want you gone is to choose exactly how you disappear and exactly when you return. Even if returning means becoming someone entirely new. The woman they tried to kill is gone forever, but the woman who took her place is everything they never expected. Someone with nothing left to lose and everything to fight for. Someone who discovered that sometimes you have to lose everything to find out who you really are. And sometimes the person you really are is someone worth dying for, someone worth living for, someone worth becoming. My aunt told everyone I was just after the money, then screamed when she found out Grandma left me everything. The funeral was 3 days ago. I'd flown in from Portland, taken unpaid time off from the hospital where I work night shifts, and slept on my friend Becca's couch because I couldn't afford a hotel. My Aunt Diane showed up in head-to-toe Chanel, her third husband trailing behind. She made a scene at the reception. Loud enough for everyone to hear, she announced that I'd barely visited Grandma in her final years, that I was only there because I wanted the house, the savings, the jewelry. Some people, she said, staring directly at me, Only show up when there's something to gain. I didn't respond. Just stood there holding my paper plate while distant cousins whispered. The truth? I'd visited Grandma every Sunday for 5 years. I'd moved her into assisted living, sorted her medications, attended every doctor's appointment. My aunt had sent a Christmas card. Once. When Grandma's dementia got bad, she'd forget my name but remember my perfume. She'd light up when I walked in, even if she thought I was her sister or some friend from 1952. I never corrected her, just sat and listened to her stories, the same ones every week. Meanwhile, Aunt Diane posted Facebook tributes about being an amazing daughter. The comments overflowed with condolences about her devastating loss. The lawyer's office was downtown, all dark wood and leather chairs. Aunt Diane arrived early, practically vibrating with anticipation. She'd already started planning. New kitchen, European vacation, maybe a boat. The lawyer, Mr. Patterson, opened the will and started reading. Standard stuff at first. Then he got to the big one. To my granddaughter, who showed up every Sunday without fail, who never made me feel like a burden, I leave my entire estate. The silence was deafening. Aunt Diane's face went from confused to red to purple. That's impossible, she hissed. I'm her daughter. There's more, Mr. Patterson interrupted. He continued reading. To my daughter Diane, who visited once in 5 years, who only called when she needed money, I leave this message. You taught me that blood doesn't make you family. Showing up does. My aunt stood so fast her chair fell backward. She started screaming about fraud, about manipulation, threatening lawsuits and criminal charges. I just sat there as Mr. Patterson handed me a thick envelope. Inside was a letter in Grandma's shaky handwriting, detailing every broken promise, every missed birthday, every time my aunt had asked for money and disappeared. As my aunt was escorted out still screaming, Mr. Patterson mentioned one more thing. There's a separate trust your grandmother established 6 months ago. Quite substantial. But there's a condition attached. He glanced at his assistant, who quietly closed the conference room door. Your aunt filed a conservatorship petition 3 weeks before your grandmother died, he continued, claiming incompetence. If it had gone through, everything would have gone to her as legal guardian. My blood ran cold. Your grandmother knew, Mr. Patterson said. She left evidence. Documentation. Recordings. Things that suggest your aunt's involvement went beyond legal maneuvering. He slid a flash drive across the table. Before you accept this inheritance, you need to know what's on here, because once you do, there's no going back. I stared at the small black device sitting between us. My hand trembled as I reached for it. What kind of evidence? I asked. Mr. Patterson's expression didn't change. The kind that could send someone to prison. I picked up the flash drive. It felt impossibly heavy. Your grandmother was sharper than anyone gave her credit for, he continued. Even with the dementia, she had moments of absolute clarity. She used those moments wisely. How long have you known about this? 6 months. She came to my office one afternoon, completely lucid, said she needed to protect you from something terrible. We spent 3 hours going through everything she documented. I clutched the flash drive tighter. And you waited until now to tell me? Those were her instructions. She wanted you to have the choice. Accept the inheritance as is, or see what's really been happening. Behind him, the assistant shifted uncomfortably. There's more, Mr. Patterson added. Your grandmother installed hidden cameras in her apartment 4 months ago. She recorded everything. My stomach dropped. Everything? Every conversation, every visit, every phone call she could capture. He paused, including several with your aunt. The room felt smaller suddenly. Outside, I could hear my aunt still yelling in the hallway, her husband trying to calm her down. I need to see it, I said. Mr. Patterson nodded slowly. I figured you would. But understand, once you watch those recordings, you can't unknow what you'll learn. And depending on what you decide to do with that information, there will be consequences. What kind of consequences? Your aunt has powerful friends. Her husband's family owns half the commercial real estate in this city. If you pursue this, they'll come at you with everything they have. I thought about Grandma sitting alone in that apartment, confused and scared, installing cameras because she knew something was wrong, knew her own daughter was planning something. I want to see everything. Mr. Patterson handed me a folder. These are the access codes. I'd recommend reviewing the materials privately, with someone you trust. I stood, legs shaky. Is that it? Not quite. He pulled out another document. Your grandmother also left you this. It was a handwritten letter, sealed in an envelope with my name on it. Her handwriting was steadier here, written before the dementia had gotten bad. Read it before you watch the recordings, Mr. Patterson said quietly. She wanted you to. I left the office through a side exit, avoiding my aunt who was still arguing with the security guard in the lobby. My rental car was parked 2 blocks away. I made it there before my hands started shaking too badly to hold the keys. Becca found me sitting in the driver's seat 20 minutes later, staring at the sealed envelope. Hey, she said, sliding into the passenger seat. I saw your aunt being escorted out. Figured you might need backup. I handed her the flash drive. Grandma left evidence. About my aunt. Becca's eyes widened. Evidence of what? I don't know yet. I turned the envelope over in my hands. But it's bad enough that the lawyer warned me about consequences. You going to open it? I tore the seal. Inside were 3 pages, front and back, in Grandma's careful script. My dearest girl, if you're reading this, then I'm gone and you know about the recordings. I'm sorry to burden you with this, but there's no one else I trust. Your aunt has been stealing from me for 3 years. Not just money, though there's plenty of that. She's been manipulating my medications, confusing me deliberately, trying to make me seem incompetent. I started noticing the gaps 6 months ago. Days I couldn't remember. Times I'd wake up and hours had passed. At first I thought it was just the dementia getting worse, but then I'd find my pill bottles rearranged. Medications I didn't recognize mixed in with my regular prescriptions. I became paranoid, I'll admit. Started writing everything down. Every pill I took, every visitor. Every phone call. The patterns emerged quickly. Your aunt visits every Tuesday afternoon. By Tuesday evening, I can barely remember my own name. It wears off by Wednesday morning, but by then, I've lost another day. I confronted her once, asked her directly what she was giving me. She cried, said I was confused, that the dementia was making me paranoid. Then she called my doctor and tried to have me committed. That's when I knew I needed proof. I installed the cameras myself, hired a private investigator with money I'd hidden from her, documented everything. It took weeks to gather what I needed, and some days I barely remembered why I was doing it, but I kept notes. Reminded myself every morning of what I was fighting for. The truth is worse than I imagined. She's not just stealing money or trying to have me declared incompetent. She's actively trying to kill me, slowly, carefully, in ways that would look natural for an elderly woman with dementia. I'm telling you this because you need to understand what you're up against. Your aunt is desperate. Her third husband is bankrupt. They've been living off credit and my money for 2 years. If she doesn't get the inheritance, they lose everything. The recordings will show you everything. What she's been giving me, how she's been forging my signature, the conversations she's had with her husband about accelerating my decline. I won't lie to you, sweetheart. Going forward with this will destroy what's left of our family. Your cousins will turn on you. Friends will take sides. The scandal will be enormous. But if you don't, she'll get away with it. And she'll do it again. Maybe to someone else's grandmother. Maybe to you someday when you're old and vulnerable. The choice is yours. I've left you everything you need to pursue justice if you want it. But I'll love you just as much if you choose to walk away and live your life. Just promise me one thing. Whatever you decide, don't let her make you small. Don't let her steal your joy the way she tried to steal my life. I love you. I'm proud of you. And I'm sorry for leaving you with this burden. Forever your grandma. I read it 3 times before I could speak. What does it say? Becca asked gently. I handed it to her. Watched her face change as she read. Holy shit, she whispered. Your aunt was poisoning her? That's what Grandma thought. Says there's proof on the recordings. Becca looked at the flash drive in her hand like it was radioactive. You have to go to the police. With what? A letter from a woman with dementia? They'll say she was confused, paranoid, that I'm making this up to justify the inheritance. Then what are you going to do? I started the car. Watch the recordings. All of them. Then decide. We drove back to Becca's apartment in silence. She lived in a converted warehouse in the arts district, the kind of place where no one asked questions. Her girlfriend was at work, giving us privacy. I set up my laptop on the kitchen table. The flash drive had dozens of video files, organized by date. I started with the oldest one, from 4 months ago. The video opened on Grandma's living room, the angle wide enough to capture the entire space. Grandma sat in her favorite chair, doing a crossword puzzle. She looked good, alert, more like herself than I'd seen her in months. Then the door opened, and my aunt walked in. Mom, hi! Grandma looked up, surprised. Diane, what are you doing here? Can't a daughter visit her mother? My aunt leaned down to kiss Grandma's cheek. I brought your favorite cookies. They chatted for a few minutes. Normal stuff. Grandma asked about my aunt's husband, about her kids. My aunt answered with practiced ease. Then, oh, I almost forgot. Dr. Reynolds called. He wanted me to adjust your medications. Grandma frowned. I just saw him last week. He didn't mention anything. Well, you know how forgetful you've been, Mom. Maybe you just don't remember. I remember perfectly well. We discussed keeping everything the same. My aunt's smile tightened. Mom, please, we've talked about this. You need to trust the doctors. She pulled a pill bottle from her purse. I watched Grandma's expression shift from confusion to something else. Fear. I don't want to take new pills, Grandma said firmly. I want to call Dr. Reynolds myself. The phone is right there. Call him. My aunt gestured toward the phone on the side table. Grandma reached for it. Her hand was steady. My aunt's mask slipped for just a second. Her jaw clenched. Then she forced the smile back. Actually, you know what? Let me call him. Save you the trouble. She picked up the phone and dialed. Had an entire conversation with someone she called Dr. Reynolds, explaining that Mom was being difficult about her medication adjustments. Except I knew Dr. Reynolds' voice. I'd attended dozens of appointments with him. That wasn't him on the phone. Grandma seemed to realize it too. She sat back in her chair, watching my aunt with narrow eyes. Take 2 of these now, my aunt said, holding out pills and a glass of water. I'll check on you tomorrow. No. Mom. I said no, Diane. Get out of my house. My aunt's expression went cold. We both know you're not competent to make these decisions anymore. If you won't cooperate, I'll have to file for conservatorship. Is that what you want? The threat hung in the air. Finally, Grandma took the pills, swallowed them with water. My aunt watched her do it, then smiled. Good. I'll see you next week. She left. The door closed. Grandma sat perfectly still for about 30 seconds. Then she stood, walked calmly to the bathroom, and I heard her vomit. She'd hidden the pills in her cheek. I paused the video, hands shaking. That was just the first visit, Becca said quietly. There are 40 more files on here. I clicked on the next one. It was worse. Over the course of weeks, I watched my aunt systematically gaslight Grandma, convince her she was losing her mind, mix unknown pills in with her regular medications when Grandma wasn't looking, make phone calls to lawyers about conservatorship while Grandma slept in the next room. In one video, my aunt's husband appeared. They spoke in low voices, thinking Grandma was asleep. How much longer? He asked. Couple of months. She's declining faster now. The new dosage is working. You're sure it won't show up in an autopsy? Who's going to request an autopsy? Old woman with dementia dies peacefully in her sleep. It happens every day. They laughed. I had to stop the video. Ran to Becca's bathroom and threw up. When I came back, Becca had her phone out. I'm calling the police. Wait. I wiped my mouth with the back of my hand. Not yet. Are you insane? You just watched them admit to murder. Attempted murder. She didn't succeed. Only because your grandma was smart enough to fight back. I sank into a chair. My whole body felt numb. If we go to the police now, what do we have? Videos that could be dismissed as a confused old woman's paranoia. A letter that could be written off the same way. We need more. More? What more do you need? Proof of what she was giving Grandma. Medical records showing the unexplained symptoms. Something concrete that ties my aunt to deliberate harm. Becca stared at me. You're thinking like a nurse. I am a nurse. And if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it right. No room for doubt. No way for her to wiggle out of it. I spent the rest of the day watching videos and taking notes. Documented every visit, every pill I saw my aunt give Grandma. Every conversation about money, about conservatorship, about how to make the whole thing look natural. By evening, I had a timeline. My aunt had started stealing small amounts 3 years ago. Just a few hundred here and there, forging Grandma's signature on checks. When Grandma started getting suspicious, my aunt began the medication manipulation, making Grandma seem more confused than she was, creating evidence of incompetence. The conservatorship petition had been the final move. Once my aunt had legal control, she could drain the accounts openly, and Grandma would die quietly in some nursing home where no one paid attention. Except Grandma had figured it out, set her trap perfectly. The last video file was dated 3 weeks before Grandma died. She was alone in her apartment, speaking directly to the camera. Hi, sweetheart. If you're watching this, then I'm gone and you have all the evidence. I hope it's enough. Her voice was weak but clear. She knew she was dying. I stopped trying to fight the pills 2 weeks ago. I'm tired. And honestly, I'd rather go on my own terms than let her put me in some facility. Tears ran down her face. But I needed to make sure she didn't win, that she didn't get to profit from my death. So I changed the will, moved my money, set everything up so you'd have what you need to stop her. She leaned closer to the camera. I'm sorry to put this on you, but you're strong enough. You've always been strong enough. Don't let her scare you. Don't let her make you doubt yourself. She smiled. That familiar smile I'd seen every Sunday for 5 years. I love you. Now go get her. The video ended. I sat in silence for a long time. What are you going to do? Becca finally asked. I ejected the flash drive and tucked it in my pocket. I'm going to do exactly what she asked. The next morning I made an appointment with a detective friend from the hospital. His name was Leo, and he'd worked with our ER on domestic violence cases. I trusted him. We met at a coffee shop far from my aunt's neighborhood. I need your advice, I said, sliding the flash drive across the table. Unofficially, Leo raised an eyebrow. That sounds ominous. My grandmother died 3 weeks ago. Before she did, she left me evidence that my aunt was trying to kill her. His expression shifted immediately. Professional. What kind of evidence? Video recordings, 4 months worth. My aunt admitting to forging signatures, stealing money, and poisoning Grandma to make her seem incompetent. Leo picked up the flash drive. You've watched them? All of them. And? It's exactly what she said it was. Clear admission of intent, conspiracy with her husband, discussion of making it look like natural causes. Leo was quiet for a moment. Then, why come to me? Why not go straight to the department? Because I want to do this right. No mistakes. No technicalities she can use to get out of it. Smart. He pocketed the flash drive. Give me 48 hours. I'll review everything and put together a case file. If it's as solid as you say, we'll bring in the DA. I felt something loosen in my chest. Relief, maybe, or just exhaustion. Thank you. Leo touched my hand briefly. Your grandmother was lucky to have you. Those 48 hours felt like an eternity. I went through the motions at work, checking vitals and changing IVs while my mind raced through everything that could go wrong. My aunt could flee. Her husband's family could pressure the DA to drop the case. The videos could be deemed inadmissible. On the third day, Leo called. We need to meet. Bring Mr. Patterson. My stomach dropped. Why? What's wrong? Nothing's wrong. But this is bigger than either of us anticipated. We met at the DA's office that afternoon. Mr. Patterson brought 2 associates. Leo had the entire financial crimes unit with him. The lead prosecutor was a woman named Victoria, who looked like she ate defense attorneys for breakfast. I've reviewed the evidence, she said without preamble. It's extraordinary. We have video confession, pattern of behavior, financial documentation. This is the strongest elder abuse case I've seen in 20 years. So you'll prosecute? I asked. Absolutely. But I need you to understand what you're signing up for. Your aunt will hire the best lawyers money can buy. This will be ugly. Public. Your entire family history will be dissected in court. I understand. Victoria smiled grimly. Good. Because we're not just charging her with theft and fraud. We're going for attempted murder. The room went silent. The medical examiner reviewed the footage. Victoria continued. Identified 3 separate substances your aunt administered that had no legitimate medical purpose. Combined with your grandmother's medical records showing unexplained symptoms during the exact time frame of these visits, we have a strong case. Mr. Patterson leaned forward. What about the husband? Conspiracy to commit murder, fraud, elder abuse. He's on the recordings admitting to knowledge and participation. I thought about my aunt's husband, always smiling blandly in the background, counting money he hadn't earned. When? I asked. We arrest them tomorrow morning. I wanted you to know first so you could prepare. Prepare for what? The fallout. Your family will be contacted. The media will pick this up. Be ready. I drove to my aunt's house that evening, not to warn her, just to see it one last time before everything changed. It was a massive colonial in the wealthiest part of town, bought with money my aunt had stolen from Grandma over the years. The driveway held a Mercedes and a BMW. Through the windows, I could see crystal chandeliers. All of it built on lies. I wondered if Grandma had ever been invited here, if my aunt had ever felt guilty, even for a moment. Probably not. I took a photo of the house, sent it to Becca with a message. Last night before the storm. She replied immediately. You okay? Getting there. The next morning, I was at the hospital when Leo called. It's done. Both in custody. I excused myself to the supply closet and called Becca. They arrested her. Holy shit. How do you feel? I didn't know how to answer that. Relief, terror, grief, satisfaction. All of it mixed together until I couldn't separate one feeling from another. I feel like Grandma can rest now, I finally said. The news broke that afternoon. Local station first, then it spread. Prominent real estate family charged with elder abuse and attempted murder. My phone started ringing immediately. Cousins I hadn't spoken to in years. Grandma's friends from church. People who'd been at the funeral. Who'd listened to my aunt's lies about me being a gold digger. I didn't answer any of them. The only call I took was from Mr. Patterson. Your aunt posted bail 2 hours ago, he said. $500,000. Her husband's family put up their commercial properties as collateral. So she's free, for now, but the judge imposed strict conditions. No contact with you, no access to any of your grandmother's assets, and she has to surrender her passport. That night, my phone lit up with a text from an unknown number. You'll regret this. I'm your family. You're throwing me away over money. I showed it to Leo the next day. Violation of the no contact order, he said immediately. Forward it to me. Will it matter? Every violation matters. We're building a pattern. The text kept coming over the next week. Sometimes from my aunt's number, sometimes from numbers I didn't recognize. Always the same themes. I was ungrateful. I'd manipulated Grandma. I was tearing the family apart over greed. I documented every single one and sent them to Leo. Then my cousins started posting on social media. Long threads about family loyalty. About how I'd stolen their grandmother's money. About how their mother was innocent and being railroaded by a vindictive niece who wanted everything for herself. The comment sections filled with people who didn't know the whole story, taking sides based on whoever posted most convincingly. I didn't respond. Just archived everything. Becca found me one night scrolling through the worst of them, tears streaming down my face. Why are you doing this to yourself? She asked gently. Because I need to remember why I'm doing this. When it gets hard, when I want to quit, I need to remember that these people chose her. Even without knowing the truth, they chose to believe the worst about me. That says more about them than it does about you. I know, but it still hurts. The preliminary hearing was scheduled for 6 weeks out. In the meantime, I tried to return to normal life, worked my shifts, paid my bills, pretended my world wasn't imploding. Mr. Patterson called regularly with updates. The DA was building an airtight case. They'd subpoenaed medical records, financial statements, phone records, everything. Your aunt's lawyers are already trying to negotiate a plea deal, he told me. What kind of deal? Return half the stolen money, plead to lesser charges. Minimal jail time. Absolutely not. That's what I told them. The DA agrees. We're going to trial. 3 weeks before the hearing, someone broke into Becca's apartment. We'd been at dinner when it happened. Came home to find the door kicked in, the place ransacked. Did they take anything? The responding officer asked. I looked around. My laptop was still there. Becca's jewelry, the TV. Then I realized the folder with copies of Grandma's letter was gone. The backup flash drive I'd hidden in my suitcase. Gone. They took the evidence. I told Leo when he arrived. He didn't seem concerned. We have the originals. Everything's been submitted to the DA. This was just intimidation. But it worked. I couldn't sleep that night. Kept imagining someone watching the apartment, waiting for another chance. Becca's girlfriend installed security cameras the next day. Got a deadbolt for the door. But the damage was done. I felt violated. Unsafe. Come stay with me and Hannah, Becca offered. At least until the trial is over. I refused. I'm not going to let them scare me off. But I was scared. Terrified, actually. Not just of another break-in, but of what my aunt was capable of. She'd tried to kill her own mother. What would she do to me? 2 weeks before the hearing, I got a call from an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. Hello? Heavy breathing. Then, you should be careful walking to your car at night. Lots of things can happen in parking garages. I hung up and immediately called Leo. That's a threat, he said. I'm assigning protective detail. You can't be serious. Your aunt is facing 20 years. Her husband is looking at 15. They're desperate. Desperate people do desperate things. For the next 2 weeks, I had an off-duty officer shadow me to and from work. It should have made me feel safer. Instead, it made everything feel more real, more dangerous. The night before the preliminary hearing, I couldn't sleep. Lay in bed staring at the ceiling, thinking about Grandma, about all those Sundays together, the way she'd smile when I walked in, how she'd held my hand during the bad days. I wondered if she'd known it would come to this, if she'd understood what she was asking of me when she left that letter. Probably. Grandma had always understood more than people gave her credit for. The courtroom was packed, media in the back rows, family members on both sides, my aunt's lawyers in expensive suits, the DA's team looking sharp and prepared. I sat behind the prosecution table, hands folded in my lap. My aunt was brought in wearing an orange jumpsuit. Her hair was unwashed, no makeup. She looked smaller somehow, diminished. When she saw me, her eyes filled with hate, pure, undiluted hatred. I stared back, didn't look away. The judge entered and everyone stood. What followed was 3 hours of legal arguments I barely understood. Motions, objections, discussions about admissibility and precedent. But when Victoria started presenting evidence, I understood perfectly. She played the videos. Not all of them, just enough to establish the pattern. My aunt's voice filled the courtroom, talking about dosages and timing and making it look natural. Several people in the gallery gasped. My cousins sat frozen, faces pale. The judge's expression never changed, just watched everything with careful attention. When it was over, the defense attorney stood. Your Honor, my client maintains her innocence. These videos could have been doctored. The medications mentioned could have been legitimate prescriptions. Without the decedent here to testify. The decedent left extensive documentation, Victoria interrupted. including a detailed letter explaining exactly what was happening, written during a period when her medical records show she was lucid and competent. A letter from a woman with dementia, a woman whose competency was deliberately undermined by the defendant. We have medical experts ready to testify that the symptoms of dementia shown in medical records correlate exactly with the dates of the defendant's visits. The defense attorney sat down, looking frustrated. The judge reviewed his notes for what felt like an eternity. Finally, I'm binding this over for trial. Bail is revoked. The courtroom erupted. My aunt started screaming. Her husband tried to stand and was forced back down by court officers. "This is a travesty!" my aunt shrieked as they led her out. "I'm her daughter! Her daughter! She was my mother!" The judge banged his gavel. "One more outburst and I'll hold you in contempt." But my aunt couldn't stop. "You'll pay for this! All of you! She was crazy and confused and you're all believing her lies." They dragged her out still screaming. I sat perfectly still, watching them take her away. Victoria touched my shoulder. "You okay?" I nodded. Couldn't speak. "This is just the beginning," she warned. "Trial won't be for another few months. It's going to get worse before it gets better." She was right. The media coverage exploded. Cable news picked it up. Daughter tries to murder mother for inheritance. It became a nationwide story. My face was everywhere. People recognized me at the grocery store, at work. Some offered sympathy. Others accused me of lying, of fabricating evidence, of being motivated by greed. I stopped reading comments online, deleted social media, just focused on getting through each day. Work became my sanctuary. In the ER, nobody cared about my family drama. They just needed someone to stop the bleeding or start an IV or hold their hand during a panic attack. I was good at that. Had always been good at showing up when it mattered. 3 months later, the trial began. I'd been prepped extensively by Victoria and her team. How to answer questions, how to stay calm under cross-examination, how to handle my aunt's lawyers trying to paint me as a gold digger who manipulated a confused old woman. "They're going to come at you hard," Victoria warned. "Attack your character. Suggest you coerced your grandmother into changing the will. You need to stay composed." Easier said than done. The first week was jury selection. 12 people who'd never met grandma or my aunt or me. 12 people who'd decide whether my aunt went to prison. I studied their faces. Tried to gauge who might be sympathetic, who might be skeptical. One woman, maybe 60, reminded me of grandma. Same soft eyes. Same careful way of listening. I hoped she made it through selection. She did. Week 2 was opening arguments. Victoria stood before the jury and laid out the entire case. Calm, methodical. She showed them the videos, walked them through the timeline, explained how my aunt had systematically stolen from and poisoned her own mother. The defense attorney tried a different approach. "This is a family dispute," he said. "A daughter concerned about her aging mother. A granddaughter who wanted the inheritance. What you're going to see is a series of unfortunate misunderstandings blown out of proportion by grief and greed." I wanted to scream, but I sat there, hands folded, face neutral. The prosecution called its first witness, Dr. Reynolds, Grandma's actual doctor. He testified that Grandma had been stable on her medications, that there was no medical reason to add or adjust anything, that he'd never called my aunt with new prescriptions. "In fact," he said, "I noted several times in her chart that I was concerned about unexplained cognitive declines that didn't match the expected progression of her dementia." "Did you investigate these concerns?" Victoria asked. "I ordered additional tests, but by the time we could schedule them, Mrs. Harrison had passed away." The defense attorney's cross-examination was brief. "Isn't it true that dementia progression can be unpredictable?" "In general, yes. But Mrs. Harrison's case showed a very specific pattern. Rapid decline after family visits, then improvement when the visits stopped." Next came the forensic accountant who'd analyzed Grandma's financial records. He'd found $127,000 in forged checks over 3 years, wire transfers to my aunt's accounts, cash withdrawals that corresponded with her visits. "The pattern is clear," he testified. "Systematic theft disguised as ordinary family financial support." My aunt's lawyer tried to argue that Grandma had given the money willingly. "Where's the documentation of these gifts?" The accountant replied, "If Mrs. Harrison was willingly supporting her daughter, why forge the signatures? Why create false records?" The lawyer had no answer. Then came the medical examiner. She'd reviewed Grandma's autopsy and the videos, identified the pills my aunt had been administering as a combination of sedatives and antipsychotics that would create symptoms mimicking severe dementia. "In someone who already had mild cognitive impairment," she explained, "these medications would create a rapid and dramatic decline, confusion, memory loss, inability to function independently." "Could these medications be fatal?" Victoria asked. "In the doses shown on the video? Potentially yes, especially combined with Mrs. Harrison's existing medications. The risk of respiratory depression, cardiac events, or aspiration would be significantly elevated." The defense attorney stood. "But Mrs. Harrison died of natural causes, correct? The death certificate lists cardiac arrest." "Yes. But cardiac arrest is what kills everyone eventually. The question is, what caused the cardiac arrest? In Mrs. Harrison's case, the contributing factors are suspicious, but not definitive? Not without blood work done immediately after death, which wasn't performed because no one suspected foul play at the time. The defense attorney seized on this. "So you can't definitively say my client caused her mother's death?" "No, but I can definitively say she administered medications that placed her mother at significant risk of death." It went on like this for weeks. Expert after expert, document after document. I testified on day 12. Walking to the witness stand felt like walking to my own execution. My aunt stared at me the entire time, her eyes burning with rage. Victoria asked me about my relationship with Grandma, about the Sunday visits, the doctor appointments. The hours spent listening to the same stories over and over. Why did you do it? She asked. Visit so faithfully when it must have been exhausting? I looked at the jury. Because she was my grandmother. Because she'd spent my entire childhood showing up for me. It was my turn to show up for her. Did you expect to inherit anything? No, I assumed everything would go to my aunt. She was Grandma's only child. When did you learn about the changed will? At the reading. Same time my aunt did. How did that make you feel? I paused, choosing my words carefully. Surprised, grateful, but mostly sad that Grandma felt she needed to protect me like that. The defense attorney took over for cross-examination. Isn't it true, he began, that you work night shifts at a hospital and struggle financially? I work night shifts because they pay slightly more. And yes, like most nurses, I live paycheck to paycheck. So you needed money? I need money to pay rent and buy groceries, but I've never needed it enough to hurt someone for it. But you knew your grandmother was wealthy? Everyone in the family knew that? And you visited her every single Sunday for 5 years. That's quite dedicated for someone who supposedly expected nothing in return. I met his eyes. I visited because I loved her. Because she raised me when my parents were too busy working. Because she came to every school play and dance recital and graduation. Because she was there. But you must have hoped. I hoped she'd live forever. That's what I hoped. Not for her money. For more time. My voice cracked on the last word. The defense attorney backed off, probably realizing he was making me sympathetic. Victoria stood for redirect. Did you know about the cameras your grandmother installed? No, not until after she died. Did you know she was documenting your aunt's visits? No. So when you visited every Sunday, you had no idea any of this was being recorded? None. You just showed up because you cared about her? Yes. I was excused after 2 hours of testimony, walked back to my seat on shaking legs. The woman who reminded me of Grandma smiled at me from the jury box. I smiled back. The defense put on its case the following week. My aunt didn't testify. Her lawyers probably knew she'd fall apart under cross-examination. Instead, they called character witnesses. Friends who said my aunt was devoted to her mother. Neighbors who'd seen her at Grandma's apartment. Victoria tore them apart on cross. Did you ever accompany the defendant to these visits? No. So you don't know what happened once the door closed? No, but did you review your friend's financial records? Of course not. So you don't know if she was stealing? She wouldn't, but you don't know for certain, do you? No. The defense tried to discredit the videos. Brought in a tech expert who testified they could have been edited. Victoria's expert demolished him. Showed how the metadata proved the videos were continuous, unedited recordings. They tried to suggest Grandma was confused when she wrote her letter. The prosecution brought in a handwriting expert who compared the letter to other documents Grandma had written. The handwriting is consistent. The syntax and vocabulary match her other correspondence. This was written by a lucid individual. By the end of week 4, the defense was out of ammunition. Closing arguments took an entire day. The defense attorney painted my aunt as a concerned daughter trying to help her aging mother. He called the videos cherry-picked moments taken out of context. He suggested I had manipulated Grandma into changing the will. Then Victoria stood for the prosecution's closing. She didn't yell. Didn't need to. She simply walked the jury through everything again. The forged checks, the unauthorized medications, the conversations about accelerating the decline, the letter from a woman who knew exactly what was happening to her. The defense wants you to believe this was a misunderstanding, Victoria said. That Diane was just a daughter trying to help. But the evidence tells a different story. This was calculated, systematic, cruel. She paused, letting that sink in. The defendant didn't just steal her mother's money. She stole her dignity, her clarity, her final years. She turned her mother's own mind against her, made her doubt her own sanity, all so she could drain bank accounts and seize control. Victoria gestured to the empty witness stand. Mrs. Harrison can't be here to tell you what happened, but she left you her voice. On those videos. In that letter. In the medical records that show the pattern of abuse. She turned to the jury. Don't let her death be for nothing. Don't let her daughter get away with this because she's good at pretending to cry. Look at the evidence. Look at what she did. And hold her accountable. The jury deliberated for 2 days. 2 days of sitting in the courthouse hallway, drinking bad coffee, jumping every time the door opened. Finally, the call came. They had a verdict. We filed back into the courtroom. My aunt was brought in, looking exhausted and terrified. The jury foreman stood. On the count of attempted murder, we find the defendant guilty. My aunt collapsed. Her husband started crying. On the counts of elder abuse, fraud, and forgery, we find the defendant guilty. I couldn't breathe. Couldn't process what I was hearing. Guilty. On everything. The judge set sentencing for 3 weeks out. I walked out of that courtroom in a daze. Reporters swarmed, but I didn't stop. Just got in Becca's car and let her drive me away. We didn't talk. She just drove to the beach and parked. I got out and walked to the water's edge. For the first time in months, I cried. Huge, gasping sobs that came from somewhere deep inside. Not from sadness. Not from relief. From exhaustion. From the weight of carrying this alone for so long. Becca found me an hour later, sitting in the sand. You did it, she said quietly. You got her. Grandma got her? I corrected. I just finished what she started. Sentencing day arrived cold and gray. The courtroom was less crowded this time. Just family, lawyers, and a handful of reporters. The judge asked if anyone wanted to make a statement before sentencing. I stood. Your Honor, I don't want to talk about what my aunt did. Everyone knows by now. What I want to talk about is what my grandmother did. I pulled out Grandma's letter, the one from the will reading. She wrote this, knowing she was dying, knowing her own daughter had betrayed her. And even then, even after everything, she didn't want revenge. She wanted justice, and she wanted me to have a choice. I looked at my aunt, who sat with her head down. My grandmother taught me that family isn't just blood, It's showing up. It's being there when things are hard and staying when it would be easier to leave. My aunt never learned that lesson, but I did. I folded the letter carefully. I hope the sentence reflects not just what my aunt tried to do, but what my grandmother overcame, the strength it took to set this in motion while her own mind was being stolen from her. That deserves to be honored. I sat down. The judge was quiet for a moment. Then he began. I've presided over many cases in my career. This one will stay with me. The cruelty displayed here, the calculated nature of the abuse is extraordinary. He looked at my aunt. You took advantage of the one person who should have been able to trust you completely. You stole her money, her dignity, and very nearly her life. You showed no remorse, no empathy, no recognition of the harm you caused. My aunt started to speak. The judge held up his hand. I've heard enough. On the count of attempted murder, I sentence you to 15 years in state prison. On the counts of elder abuse, fraud, and forgery, I sentence you to an additional 10 years to run consecutively. 25 years total. My aunt would be 73 when she got out. Her husband received 12 years as an accomplice. They were led away separately. My aunt didn't look at me, just stared straight ahead, broken. Outside the courthouse, reporters wanted statements. Victoria handled it. I just stood beside her numb. Justice was served today, Victoria said. Not just for Mrs. Harrison, but for all elderly victims of abuse who can't speak for themselves. That night, I sat in my apartment alone. The inheritance had been released. More money than I'd ever imagined having. Enough to quit my night shifts, go back to school, buy a house. But all I could think about was Grandma, how she'd planned all this, how she'd protected me even when she couldn't protect herself. I opened my laptop and started going through her estate documents Mr. Patterson had sent. There were accounts I didn't know about, investments, a safety deposit box she'd kept for 40 years, and a letter addressed to me, different from the one about my aunt. This one was older, written before the dementia had started. My dearest girl, if you're reading this, I'm gone and you've survived what I knew was coming. I've known for years that your aunt was trouble. The signs were always there. The selfishness, the entitlement, the way she looked at me sometimes, calculating what I was worth. I'm sorry I couldn't protect you from the ugliness that followed, but I knew you were strong enough to handle it. The money is yours now. Use it wisely. Use it to build the life you deserve. Don't let guilt or grief make you small. Remember, I chose you. Not because you needed the money, but because you earned it. Every Sunday, every doctor's appointment, every time you showed up when showing up was hard. That's worth more than any inheritance. Love, Grandma. I read it 3 times. Then I picked up my phone and called Becca. Hey, she answered. How are you holding up? I'm good. Actually, I'm better than good. Yeah? Yeah. I'm thinking about buying a house. Want to help me look? She laughed. Absolutely. Where are you thinking? I looked at Grandma's letter again. Somewhere with a big backyard. So I can plant a garden. Grandma always wanted me to have a garden. Then that's what we'll find. I hung up and opened my laptop to real estate listings. For the first time in years, I felt light, like I could breathe again. Grandma had given me more than money. She'd given me permission to live fully, to not carry the weight of her death or my aunt's crimes, to just be free. And that's exactly what I planned to do. 6 months later, I stood in my new backyard, hands in the dirt, planting roses. The house was perfect. 3 bedrooms, big windows, and a yard that caught the morning sun. I'd quit the night shifts, started a program to become a nurse practitioner, began volunteering at an elder care advocacy group. Every Sunday, I visited Grandma's grave, brought fresh flowers and told her about my week. It felt right, like those Sunday visits had come full circle. I never spoke to my aunt again, didn't visit her in prison, didn't respond to her letters. My cousins eventually reached out. Some apologized. Most just wanted to know if I'd help them financially now that I had money. I kept my distance from all of them, built a new family instead. Friends who showed up, colleagues who cared, people who understood that family is what you make it. On the 1-year anniversary of Grandma's death, I hosted a small gathering. Becca and her girlfriend came, my friend from the hospital, the woman from the jury who'd reminded me of Grandma. We'd become friends after the trial ended. We sat in my garden and shared stories about the people we'd lost, the ones who'd shaped us. Your grandmother would be proud, the former juror said. Her name was Patricia. You think so? I know so. You honored her memory by fighting for justice. But more than that, you honored it by living, by not letting bitterness destroy you. I looked around at the people gathered in my garden, people who showed up, who cared. She taught me that, I said. In the end, that's what she wanted me to learn, that showing up matters more than anything else. Patricia raised her glass. To showing up. To showing up, we echoed. As the sun set over my garden, painting everything gold, I felt Grandma's presence. Not sad or haunting, just there, the way she'd always been, watching over me, proud of what I'd become, and finally at rest.